that abortion is not acceptable under any circumstance. 19% say the procedure is only acceptable when the mother's life is at risk, while 12% feel that abortion is okay if the unborn baby will suffer from significant mental or physical defects. The survey also reveals that nearly one-third of churchgoers have no opinion on abortion. Michael Harrington reporting.
Young women have grown emboldened in their conservative beliefs, attending the annual conference held by Turning Point USA in large numbers over the weekend. The organization was founded by Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated in September. The women don't want to apologize for their traditional views on everything from faith, marriage, and family, and they draw inspiration from Kirk's widow, Erica. This is SRN News. The Auto Club AAA predicts some 115 million people in the U.S. will go 50 miles or more from home from last Saturday up through New Year's Day as they do their Christmas traveling. That's overall a 2% increase compared to last year. And AAA spokeswoman Aisha Diaz says that while it is a busy time of year, the pace will actually slow on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Then things ramp back up post-Christmas with people coming back home and the New Year's crowd that wants to travel for New Year's Eve. So you're going to see travel pick back up New Year's Eve week for people who are trying to be somewhere to ring in 2026.
Now, most of the people are expected to be on those busy roads. AAA expects about 8 million people to travel by air. That is a 2.3% increase compared to last year. This will reportedly be the first time on record that the number of domestic air travelers over the year-end holiday period exceeds 8 million. More of these stories at srnnews.com.
Micah 5, verse 2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Micah 5, verse 2, the prophecy concerning where Messiah would be born.
Are you interested in reading through the Bible in a year? Visit BibleReadingChallenge.org and begin today.
You're listening to VCY America Worldwide, KBCX Gregory, and WVIW Bridgeport.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
The Battle of the Bulge. The Nazis mounted an enormous attack against the Allies in the Ardennes forest. The Germans soon surrounded the 101st Airborne Division in southern Belgium and demanded their surrender. General McAuliffe answered the Nazis in one word: nuts. 3 days later, relief came and the Allies began a counterattack. In his order given this day, December 22, 1944, General Eisenhower stated, "I call upon every man to rise to new heights of courage. With unshakable faith in the cause for which we fight, we will, with God's help, go forward to our greatest victory."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us today here on Crosstalk. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the consistent attacks upon Jews and Christians as Islam directs, rather it is Islam that is claiming to be the victim. That the real problem in the United States and in countries around the world is Islamophobia. The mayor of London is actually blaming President Trump of being Islamophobic and that he is fostering the so-called radicalization of Muslims. Oh, really? There are those who are pushing for a unified definition of Islamophobia to also include insults to their prophet or sacred symbols of Islam, but also if you have a perspective that is in opposition to Islam. Followers of Islam are regularly targeting infidels whom they define as Christians and Jews. As such, Congressman Randy Fine is now calling for the mass deportation of all mainstream Muslim immigrants. Senator Tommy Tuberville is also warning about Islam, posting, quote, "Islam is not a religion, it's a cult. Islamists aren't here to assimilate, they're here to conquer," end of quote. In response to this, the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responds by saying Senator Tuberville is giving, quote, "an outrageous, disgusting display of Islamophobia." Well, friends, the question on today's program is, what is the threat? Is it Islam or is it Islamophobia? Joining us today, we welcome back Shahram Hadian, who is founder of Truth and Love Ministry. Shahram is a Christian pastor and a former Muslim. He was born in Iran, came to America in 1978 to escape an oppressive Islamic regime, and committed his life to Jesus Christ in 1999. He has an extensive background not only as a pastor, but also a former police officer, teacher, coach, and servant leader in his community. Shahram, thanks for joining us here on Crosstalk.
Jim, it's great to be with you as always.
So,
thank you for having me on.
Shahram, we've got so much taking place, and I'm going to start out with some international issues and then, of course, bring things back home. But, it all ties to what's happening here domestically as well. And beginning with Bondi Beach, Australia, just a week ago, Jews were celebrating Hanukkah. Followers of Islam, who are followers of the Quran, in an act of terrorism, killed many. We found that there appears to have been connections to being trained by ISIS in the Philippines. Your comment on what took place in Bondi Beach, Australia?
Well, for those who are not familiar with, like you said, part of what's going on overseas, New Zealand and Australia have been dealing with the Islamic growth there for probably the last 10 years. It's been getting worse and worse. And I've talked to people who live there who've told me that, the government continues to protect Muslims, continues to protect Islam, and anybody that criticizes Islam is deemed as the Islamophobe. And I think this played into the environment, because here you have a blatant attack against Jews, a blatant attack against what the Quran calls the people of the book, Christians and Jews, where they killed 15 Jews, injured 40. And what's the response of the Australian government? We want more gun control, as if that's going to stop this, and we want to now go against hate speech. Well, what they really mean by hate speech is anything that criticizes or points out that this is indeed Islam, and not just ISIS or radicalism or extremism, as they use these terms. So imagine a father, Jim, training his son to the point where you're going to go, this isn't a father and son trip where you go fishing or you go camping. A father and a son go out there and stand out there for many, many minutes, shooting. Nobody stops them. Where was the police? And now the government wants to come after those who are going to further criticize Islam. So it's grieving what happened there. It's an indication of what is happening in Western Europe, and it's an indication, sadly, of what is happening in America. And this, just to be clear, what happened in Australia was not extremism. It is a command from Islam, the command that they must wage war against the Jews and the Christians. So if Jews are celebrating Hanukkah, according to Islam, that is pagan, and therefore that's why that attack would have been justified and would have been a justifiable act of jihad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to play just a clip, because this did not just come as a surprise in Australia, but Israel's prime minister tells how he warned Australia about what was to come. Here's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
On August 17th, about 4 months ago, I sent Prime Minister Albanese of Australia a letter in which I gave him warning that the Australian government's policy was promoting and encouraging anti-Semitism in Australia. I wrote, Your call for a Palestinian state pours full fuel on the anti-Semitic fire. It rewards Hamas terrorism. It emboldens those who menace Australian Jews and encourages the Jew hatred now stalking your streets. Anti-Semitism is a cancer. It spreads when leaders stay silent. It retreats when leaders act. I call upon you to replace weakness with action, appeasement with resolve. Instead, Prime Minister, you replaced weakness with weakness and appeasement with more appeasement. Your government did nothing to stop the spread of anti-Semitism in Australia. You did nothing to curb the cancer cells that were growing inside your country. You took no action. You let the disease spread. And the result is the horrific attacks on Jews we saw today.
And I'm going to stop right there because he goes on for several more minutes here. But Shahram, it's important to point out that the Prime Minister of Australia was calling for a Palestinian state. And Israel's Prime Minister saying this has been the policy of Australia. You're fostering this very attitude, this anti-Jew hatred in your own country.
Correct. That was part of what my reference was, that this is not recent. This is a long-standing policy of the Australian government, also of neighboring New Zealand, where, in fact, Albanese came out and just, quote, he was asked by a reporter, Albanese is the Prime Minister of Australia, where they asked him, quote, the question was, is radical Islam the greatest domestic security threat Australia faces? And he said, no, it is sovereign citizens and neo-Nazis. In fact, he said that it is extremist perversion of Islam. It's not really Islam. So this deflection, by the way, what is the greatest root of anti-Semitism? The greatest, or source, I should say, on the planet today of anti-Semitism comes out of the Quran, comes out of Islam, Jim. When Muslims are told that Muhammad taught in the Hadith that the last hour would not come, this is in Sahih Bukhari, the last hour would not come until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and the stone or the tree would cry out, "Hey, Muslim, come here and kill the Jews that are hiding behind these stones and trees." So we have to understand, when the Quran refers to Jews as crooked-nosed apes, pigs, monkeys, teaches that they are the perverters, that they distorted the teaching, quote, of God in the Old Testament. Once again, governments refuse, and in my opinion, it's a blatant refusal to connect the dots, because they're more afraid of the jihadists within their borders than they are of the Christians or the Jews within their borders, because you don't see Christians and Jews going and killing people and blowing things up when we don't get our way. Yeah. So, this is an absolute failure. But I don't think it's accidental. I think it's willful, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and Palestinian Media Watch, I mean, they captured many of the postings on Facebook by Palestinians. Here are just a few. Like 9/11, the Mossad did it. Here's another one. Like the Holocaust, when Jews burned Jews and accused Hitler. Here's another one. Jews sacrifice a few pigs of their own to flip the scales. Another one said the Jews want the world's sympathy. They are the ones who commit these tricks. Terrible responses there. You know, and that's what's coming from Palestinian, many Facebook postings there. But Shahram, some have questioned. They said, didn't you know that the hero, the one who fought with his bare hands against one of the attackers, was a Muslim himself? Comment on that.
Well, from what I've read, there's still a little bit of controversy about this gentleman's background and whether, he was actually a follower of Islam. I mean, obviously he is. They claim he's from Syria. Of course, there's Christians in Syria. Just because someone's an Arab doesn't mean they're a Muslim. But regardless of the fact, he intervened, but then also didn't stop the shooter, didn't shoot the shooter. So it was an interesting reaction from a law enforcement standpoint. I was watching that, going, well, you jumped in and you intervened, which was kind of a courageous act, in the first part of it. But then because he didn't engage the shooter was allowed to go and rearm. So that was a little bit of a weird decision there. But nevertheless, it doesn't negate the fact that if a individual who is, an Arab from the Middle East intervenes, whatever his background, it doesn't negate the fact of what the ideology of Islam is, what the teachings of Islam are, and what those two individuals were simply doing. They were carrying out the command of their prophet. They were carrying out the command of their text, of their sources. And that is irrefutable. But that's what Western governments, including, Jim, our own government here in America, refuses to listen to and understand. Every time we hear these terms like radical Islam or even, the Islamist or extremism, every time it's a deflection. It is creating the narrative somewhere there is a peaceful version of Islam, and the reality is 1,400 plus years of Islamic history has shown, unfortunately, it doesn't exist. There is no peaceful version of Islam ideologically anywhere in its history.
So what you're saying is radical Islam is Islam. The Islamist is Islam. I mean, whatever characteristic you put or adjective you want to use, extremist Islam, what you're saying, Shahram, is Islam itself.
That's exactly right. That is prescriptive. What they are doing, what their prophet did. Because here's how you evaluate it. Don't evaluate it based on my opinion. You evaluate it based on their text and based on the example of their prophet. If their prophet ordained it, if their prophet told them to do it, whether it is in the Quran itself or in the Hadith, his traditions, as I quoted the one earlier, then that means that for them not to do it, they're going against the explicit teachings of their prophet. And if you deny those teachings, as some Muslims do, I've pointed out to people that the Sunni Muslims in Syria were killing the Alawite Muslims in Syria. Well, why were they killing the Alawites? Because the Alawites are not true Muslims. They're considered a cult within Islam because they reject the latter verses of the Quran. They reject what's called abrogation. So therefore, they need to be removed and done away with, just as the non-Muslims would be. So this is the reality the world's got to come to. This is Islam. Nothing else, nothing more. This is Islam.
Is Shahram Hadian with us today? What is the threat, Islam or Islamophobia? Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, is there any evidence that man and dinosaurs lived together?
Yes, indeed there is, Chris. The Bible even describes dinosaur-like beasts in the book of Job, and Job lived after the flood. Also, we see numerous places where native peoples drew pictures of dinosaur-like beasts. Almost every nation around the world has legends of dragons, huge reptilian beasts that sound very much like our modern-day reconstructions of dinosaurs. Recently, some very interesting burial stones have been excavated from tombs in South America, which clearly show dinosaurs and humans together. These stones date from long before dinosaurs were reconstructed from their fossils. As far as we know, no dinosaurs are alive today, but we have good evidence that dinosaur-like beasts existed along with humans in the not-too-distant past. It all started back in Genesis.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
What is the threat? Islam or Islamophobia? That's our topic today. Shahram Hadian is with us, founder of Truth and Love Ministry. He is a former Muslim, was born in Iran, came to the United States back in the late 70s, and came to Christ in 1999. And discussing this issue today, Shahram, let's take a look at what's going on even in Europe. We have the cancellation of Christmas markets. So many have gone under threat. We have places there in Europe that have actually canceled the traditions for many years of New Year's Eve or Christmas time, canceled as a result of threats from Islam itself. And yet we have the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who's actually accusing the Trump administration of causing this radicalization, so to say. That's his words. Let's listen to what he said, and then we'll have you comment on this.
some of the things President Trump has said and done lead me to believe he's a president who is racist, who is misogynistic, and who is Islamophobic. And I'd go further. I think he's somebody who is anti-Muslim as well. My concern about when President Trump says some of the things he does is he normalizes and brings to the mainstream views that I think are unacceptable. I'm always willing to debate and have a discourse and have discourse with anybody about almost any issue. But there is a direct link between language and how sometimes people can become radicalized, you couldn't call it groomed, and so forth. And we've seen in the UK a massive increase in anti-Muslim hatred, a massive increase, by the way, also in...
So he's radicalizing people in Britain?
You know, intentionally or unintentionally, you are seeing people who are taking the views of the President of the United States as a green light to pave in a certain way.
Okay, so Shahram, President Trump is causing this radicalization.
Well, I mean, that's obviously completely a lie. It is deceptive. It is deflection. This is what they do really well. These Islamic leaders like Khan and many other mayors in the UK, including those in America now, and I think that we'll be looking forward to that type of language coming from Mr. Mamdani in New York, which is its deflection. It's your fault that we are, you see extremism. It's your fault that we see radicalization. They never want to actually look at the source. And, of course, the media plays along with it. The media, it sells because they want to, in this case, they want to blame Trump because we're saying, Trump is saying, look at the Somali population in Minnesota and all the billions of dollars of fraud, or over $1 billion that has gone through remittance back to Somalia to fund Al-Shabaab, a Islamic terrorist group. Or look at what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan, or Dearborn Heights, or Hamtramck, Michigan, or Patterson, New Jersey, or down in Texas. It's always a deflection, Jim. It's always Islam is not the problem. You making us mad is the problem. You see, if you make us mad, if you say bad things about us, by the way, we have to define this term Islamophobia because people have to understand there is nowhere in Islamic text that has the word Islamophobia or anything about phobia. This was a made-up term. Out of the, there's controversy about whether it came out of the United Nations, whether it came out of what's called the OIC, which is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the largest voting bloc in the United Nations. There's controversy about where it came in. But going back to 2014, the UN had put forth Resolution 1618. And Resolution 1618 is basically what they want to use as the criminalization of Islamophobia. Now, within Islamic text, the term that if you say anything derogatory about Islam, it's called slander. So if you slander the Prophet of Islam, let's say you say Muhammad was a mass murderer, Muhammad was a pedophile because he married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage when she was 9 with Aisha. If you say anything like that, or Muhammad is a false prophet, let's say we say, well, now you slandered Islam. And within Islam, if you're in an Islamic country, that's a death sentence. It could be a death sentence. But in America, because they can't kill you yet, what they want is then to criminalize that slander. And they've used the term Islamophobia to basically cover over, instead of slander, they say Islamophobia. But really, if they call you an Islamophobe, they're really threatening you. That's what they're really doing. And we need to turn the tables on them and start putting them on the defensive.
Shahram, I want to share with the definition that's coming in, and I saw the headline recently from Jihad Watch on Islamic organizations are demanding this unified definition of Islamophobia, and they quote the organization you mentioned, the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and they are wanting a definition that is going to be consistent with this, and this is how the OIC defines Islamophobia. Quote, Islamophobia is a combination of hate, fear, and prejudice against Islam, against Muslims, as well as against anything associated with the religion, such as mosque, Islamic centers, Holy Quran, hijab, etc. It also constitutes hatred, stigmatization, racism, and discriminates in daily life, on media, at workplace, in political sphere, etc. It rests in the mind and it reflects in attitudes and could be manifested through violent actions such as burning mosques, vandalizing properties, abusing women wearing scarf, or insulting prophet, that's referring to making an insult of Muhammad, or sacred symbols of Islam. That is more or less how Islamophobia identifiable, how it manifests, or can be seen not only from incidents, but also through perspectives, statements, behavior, and gestures. Since the last 2 decades, Islamophobia keeps growing in some parts of the world through intensive campaigns and public discourses disseminating fear of Islam, and through significant number of incidents targeting Muslims, mosque, Islamic attire, and Islamic most revered figures. That's quite a definition of Islamophobia.
Oh my gosh, that's the most open-ended, like kitchen sink, right? Throw everything in that you can imagine. Let's see if we can maybe tackle a few of those. First of all, they talked about burning mosques and physically attacking people. Okay, those are already crimes. So, we don't encourage anybody to burn a mosque down. We don't encourage anybody to commit an act of violence. I don't want anybody to go up and beat up a Muslim woman. We need to share the gospel with them. We need to have the heart of Christ to be able to go up to them because they're in bondage. That's what it is. I was in it. I know. I came out of it. And so Islam is bondage. Islam is a demonic antichrist bondage. So that's a straw man argument. All right, now let's go to thought. This is, and you mentioned Khan in the UK, but let's talk about Starmer, their prime minister, Jim. Starmer is the one who is carrying the water for the Muslims because after every attack, they come out and say, our number one concern is Islamophobia. Mm-hmm. So the idea is now in the UK, what we're witnessing is for people who post their ideas. If I were to post online, Islam is evil. After the Bondi attack, I put on my social media, this is Islam. Islam is demonic and evil. If I was in the UK, if I was in Australia, or if I was probably in Dearborn, Michigan, the police would knock on my door and they would want to question me or even arrest me now for hate speech. Well, wait a second. I was simply expressing my view. So if you go based on that open-ended, throw in the kitchen sink definition of Islamophobia, it would absolutely destroy any opposition to stopping the advancement of Islam. Representative Randy Fine, as you mentioned earlier, he's now looking to, as you know, form a coalition within the House Republicans to stop Sharia law. So if you and I say Sharia is as a legal system antithetical to the United States Constitution, is that Islamophobia? If we can factually prove that Sharia violates the tenets of the First Amendment or the Bill of Rights, is that Islamophobia? According to the OIC, absolutely.
You're right.
And they would open the door for the advancement of Islam with no opposition. That's what they're trying to do, in my opinion.
And friends, that's what we're trying to do. What they are trying to do worldwide, and there seems to be a very soft spot in the hearts of, you mentioned Starmer and certainly Sadiq Khan and other leaders, Albanese, toward Islam itself, until things get so far out of control, and then there's all kinds of accommodation made. Well, if we only do this, then these acts of terror will stop. But Shahram, it never happens that way.
It never happens. You remember under Obama when he said that if we just give ISIS jobs, that if they just had a better economy, they would stop wanting to kill. It will never stop. Just like Israel will never, until the Lord returns, Israel will never stop being at war with its Muslim neighbors, because Islam, and that's why right now we see the greatest persecution of Christians. We have absolute genocides of Christians happening in Sudan, in Nigeria, in Syria, alarming levels in Pakistan, alarming levels now happening, of course, in Iran. So it will never stop. That's the delusion about this whole thing. The Bible talks about that ultimately God will send a spirit of delusion upon those who are not lovers of the truth. And so people, they can sit here and make excuses. And many Christians out there, you know, Jim, I deal with this a lot. Many of these interfaith Christians that believe that Muslims and Christians can just have this common ground and live in harmony and peace together, many of them foolishly believe that if we just are nice to Muslims, if we're just nice about Islam, if we say nothing derogatory, and I always say, I don't hate individual Muslims, but I hate the ideology of Islam with a passion because I know the spirit behind it. I came out of it. It denies everything about the Bible. It denies everything about Christ. So how can I coexist with it? How can I, as a Christ follower, coexist with an ideology that denies my Lord, denies his sacrifice upon the cross, his death, his burial, his resurrection, the deity of God, the Trinity? How can I coexist with that, Jim? No Christian should be able to coexist with that. And the problem is Western society thinks it can appease this ideology. The red part of that axis, the globalist, the socialist, the Marxist, the communist, they think they can appease the green, which is Islam, and foolishly they're finding out, nope, once they get to enough strength, they're now demanding. And there was an article on Jihad Watch that just said all of France has become a no-go zone. Yes. Not just parts of Paris. Yeah. All of France has now become a no-go zone. And it's dangerous for Jews. It's going to become dangerous for Christians. And if we don't wake up in America, that's now what is actually happening here.
No, and instead what we're doing is there's capitulation going on. For instance, I just saw a CARE for the Council on American Islamic Relations. They are applauding the City Council of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because they just added 2 Islamic holidays, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, to the city calendar, Shahram, and I mean, for the city to recognize this. And we have another place, I believe it's in North Dakota, whereby they have just also added a Somali Heritage Day. This is just 2 weeks after a Muslim terror attack took place, where a Syrian refugee packed up several rifles and handguns, 1,800 rounds of ammo, a hand grenade, a car filled with gas cans on his way to carry out an Islamic terrorist attack on Fargo's downtown street fair. I mean, and here we are awarding them, and I spoke right up to a break. We're going to take the break. I'm going to have you comment on this following. Shahram Hadian is with us today. His website, tillministry.com. That stands for Truth in Love. tillministry.com. We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Every day, we are faced with challenges as the world, flesh, and the devil attempt to take us off course. Are you weary of your constant spiritual battle? Do you need daily help to put on the whole armor of God? VCY introduces you to the book, Draw Swords, written by Dr. Dave Barba, who has served over 50 years in full-time ministry and engaged in many spiritual battles. Draw Swords provides 365 daily devotions. Each one is true to the text with expositional facts and practical application to help you know God, conquer temptation, survive trials, and finish well. Suit up and draw swords. The devotional Draw Swords, available for a donation of $15 when you call VCY. 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Shahram Hadian is with us today, and let me just add a little bit to what I spoke on leading up to the break. I mean, so many articles are coming out. Let's go to Washington State. King5.com reported recently about a 38-year-old man accused of making a false 911 call, then stabbing the responding Bellevue Police Department officer with a kitchen knife. That happened December 12th. The man's name, Mohammed Morey. We also have out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, another situation here where a man threatened to burn down a building on social media. This is Metro Communications received a call. A man with a live streaming the threats of a Facebook claimed to have a gun, was flashing a knife, lighting things on fire. His name, Mohammed Mansari. We had just mentioned things going on in North Dakota. New Hampshire, of course, is adding Eid holidays to the calendar. And in North Dakota here, in Fargo, Sharam, adding a Somali Heritage Day 2 weeks after a Muslim terror attack. How do we make sense of this?
I don't think you can. It's suicide. It is like we are watching ourselves commit suicide in this nation. It is digging our own grave, Jim. Washington State, to some extent, was not a surprise. Last year, Washington State recognized both of those, quote, Muslim holidays, and yet the state of Washington does not recognize Easter as an official state holiday. It does not yet recognize Yom Kippur as an official state holiday. So we see these accommodations that these leftist leaders are doing, but yet North Dakota is not a leftist state. Sioux Falls, South Dakota is not a leftist state, at least not supposed to be. But we were in Sioux Falls, Jim. You know the story when Brandon and I were there in 2017, when the heavily armed Muslim guy came into our conference with 5 weapons, 2 rifles, 1,250 rounds of ammunition, made 4 live stream videos threatening our conference. The police in Sioux Falls, South Dakota did nothing. They came out after a number of days and said that the public information officer came out and said this man was just exercising his First and Second Amendment rights. Yet he made direct threats.
Yes.
He had bullets that he was doing on the video. He called them halal bullets for us. So this is, as a former police officer, it makes me sick to my stomach when I see the ineptness of law enforcement, because all of their training, we have to understand, all of their training in counterterrorism and recognizing jihad and recognizing ideology that would lead to violence, all of it has been purged. All of it has been done away with. And what are they filling it with? Don't be Islamophobic. You can't say anything about Islam. You can't say anything about Muslims. Meanwhile, these attacks happen. By the way, in Bellevue, I was a police officer in the neighboring city of Bellevue in Redmond, Washington, and we've been watching the Islamic takeover of that part of Washington State. And yet, what does the media do when these attacks happen? They don't identify the attackers as a Muslim, or ideology is never considered. It's always they were unstable, they had mental issues, we don't know what the motivation is, even though they were, in many cases shouting Allah Akbar, their God is the greatest. And so I don't know how else to say it, but it is absolute insanity. It is a nation that is spiraling, Jim, because we have forsaken the true God, we have forsaken justice, and we don't have the courage to stand up and say the hard things.
Yeah, and when the people do stand up to say the hard things, as we referenced earlier about like Congressman Randy Fine calling for mass deportation of all what he called mainstream Muslim immigrants, and then we have Senator Tommy Tuberville warning about Islam, saying Islam is not a religion, it's a cult. Islamists aren't here to assimilate, they're here to conquer. And then you have Chuck Schumer turning around and calling this an outrageous, disgusting display of Islamophobia.
Yeah, well, I mean, there again, right? There again lies the low-hanging fruit, right? The low-hanging fruit is don't disparage the one people group that are untouchable. That's what it's become, right? We've created an untouchable people group on the planet. That's what's so bizarre about this, is that these leftists, the red side of that axis I mentioned earlier, it protects the green until the green takes over. We see this with the LGBTQ, like in Hamtramck, Michigan. I brought this example before, where you see the leftists, the feminists, the LGBTQ. They defend the Muslims. They defend Islam. They defend the pro-Palestinian movement. And yet until when? Until the Muslims take over. And then what will the Muslims do? They will turn on the leftists. That's the absolute definition of the communist term, useful idiots. It is the absolute perfect description of fools, because and even you saw Tulsi Gabbard spoke at the Turning Point USA event and said the greatest threat to freedom is Islamist ideology, who seek a global caliphate. She mentioned CARE. Okay, that's a good start. But Tulsi, it's not Islamist. It's Islam. Mm-hmm. It is the ideology. Yes, there are individual Muslims, Jim, who don't follow their own ideology, just like there's many Christians who don't follow the Bible. But we're talking about it's the ideology. The ideology should be banned. If you ban the ideology, it would never allow the individuals to take a hold and demand their accommodation. But this is a long-term strategy that I've told people. We have to go after the ideology. We have to not be worried about all these names and all the labels and all the attacks and calling us Islamophobes. We got to be courageous and go after the ideology, as Representative Randy Fine is doing. And now, I know we were going to talk about Texas and Florida. Yeah. It's a starting point that they've at least those two states have designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as foreign terrorist organizations. The Trump administration has right now done nothing. People have to understand Trump's executive order did nothing but establish an exploratory committee to look at certain things for 45 days. What they did at the state level was at least better language, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we have both Texas and Florida that have declared CARE to be a terrorist organization, Council on American Islamic Relations. We understand CARE has now filed a lawsuit against Governor DeSantis there. Also, just to put into the notes here, WND.com over the weekend reported that the Indiana Attorney General, Todd Rokita, is calling on the governor of Indiana to join other Republican governors in calling CARE a terrorist organization and putting pressure on Indiana to do the same thing.
Yes. There is, I would look at this. Last year when I looked at the environment, I said, man, we are done. We're toast in where we are at. This year, there has been a level of wake-up. And thank God for these voices like Randy Fine and some of the state legislators and, like the Attorney General that you mentioned, who are saying, yes, every Republican governor should come out if they have the courage and follow suit with the language of Texas and Florida's proclamations that I've read both of them, and designate the parent organization, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, and then specifically they have to go after CARE. Now I would add that they need to add two other organizations specifically to that list. One is the Muslim Student Associations, because they're on college campuses, and they're the ones who have been recruiting. They're the ones who've been doing their evangelism. They're the ones who have been part of the organizing for all these, quote, pro-Palestinian, protests and temper tantrums that we've seen on college campuses. So I would say they got to add the MSA and specifically ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. They're the ones, Jim, who are behind all of the ecumenicalism and interfaith. They're the ones who suck in all the churches and the Catholic Church and the Christian churches and the Jewish synagogues into believing that they can coexist under this banner of interfaith and multi-faith. And those three groups, remember, are all subordinate to the Muslim Brotherhood. They're all subgroups of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so I would love, I think that would at least give us a fighting chance as a starting point. But where Representative Randy Fine and Tuberville are going is where we need to go, which is you got to be able to ban the ideology. You got to be able to say this ideology has no room in public accommodation. You can't have people in office. I mean, why has Ilhan Omar not been deported by now? Why has Rashida Tlaib? How much more can Ilhan Omar come out? I don't know if you saw that video of the former Prime Minister of Somalia who was speaking at a rally for her in Minnesota. It said Ilhan Omar is not about America or about Minnesota. She is all about Somalia. How is that not treason? Mm-hmm. How is that not, from a sitting member of Congress, treason when you're openly saying we could care less about the country that I'm supposed to be a representative of? My allegiance is to my home country where she was born. That is a fundamental act of treason, because you're now showing allegiance to a foreign power and a foreign potentate, and it should nullify your legal status in this nation. They should yank her status and send her back. Rashida Tlaib with her, and all the other ones should go back. So, it sounds harsh to a lot of Christians. Let's deport them all. But I would say anybody that wants public accommodation of Islam should be deported, should be kicked out. That's where I've stood for many, many years now.
Friends, our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. That's 1-800-733-9829. Taking your questions or brief comments for our guests. I want to just get one more issue in here on the weekend, or from the weekend. And Tucker Carlson appeared at Turning Point USA's AmFest this past Thursday. Well, he was angry, and he scolded the people in attendance. And this is what he had to say. It's a brief clip, and we'll have you comment here, Sharam. Here's Tucker Carlson.
And what you're watching now, attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims, it's disgusting. And I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I know there's a lot of effort to claim I'm a secret jihadi. I'm not. You should not attack people on those grounds. And you're seeing it from Republicans.
Okay, and he went on. He had an expletive that we edited out at the end, but he is scolding the people here, and as it pertains to Islam itself. And Sharam, you're warning the very things we're talking about are tenets of Islam. Your response to Tucker Carlson?
Well, number one, he blatantly lied in that speech, because he said, "I don't take any PAC or any." He talked about his donors, and he talked about whatever. The money that was coming in. We can directly prove Tucker Carlson has financiers for his network that are from Iran, from Pakistan, and from Qatar. We know that he went to Doha recently in Qatar. He's bought a home in Qatar. He's talked about how wonderful Sharia law is. This is not a surprise. And the best way to understand the damage that Tucker Carlson is doing to the conservative movement and for protecting our Constitution is just go read all the comments of how many Muslims are sharing his clip, and how many Muslims around the world are saying, how they're grateful for Tucker Carlson. So what does that tell you? That tells you that for him coming out and saying you can't attack Muslims. Well, what we're saying is you can attack the ideology, because if that, like, would Tucker Carlson say the same thing about communism? Would he say you can't attack communism, you can't attack socialism? But if you say you can't attack Islam, now that's disgusting.
We're back in a minute. This is Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. This weekend, perhaps you saw some of the clips coming out of the Turning Point USA conference. People up there arguing back and forth, some defending the Islamists, the Muslims, others taking a good position and defending the Jewish state. One has to wonder if this division is not on purpose, maybe to convince people to go to a third option, which is interfaith dialogue. Well, let's find a way for the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims to all get along, interfaith dialogue. That's one of the goals of Muslim Brotherhood. Is that what's going on? And then we saw Erica Kirk march out with some singer named Nicki Minaj. I don't recommend you go look up the lyrics to her song. But wait a minute. I thought this whole idea was to get involved in the issues of our day and to raise Christian young families, get married, have children, find a Bible-teaching church. Have we heard that coming from some of the leadership at Turning Point USA? So can someone please tell me why, for the sake of a big tent, you march out Nicki Minaj? There's a serious schizophrenic worldview issue that needs to be addressed, in my opinion.
What is the threat, Islam or Islamophobia? That's the question today. Sharam Hadian is our guest. His website, he's got many, many resources on his site, teachings and lots of helpful information. TILministry.com, TIL, that stands for Truth and Love, TILministry.com. Lines are packed here. George in Olney, Illinois, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Islam's ideology is the doctrine of demons. Allah is a demon. He is a fallen angel. He is responsible for stupidity.
Thank you, George. What do you think? Shahram, Islam, the doctrine of demons?
100%. 100%. Allah was a pagan god. Allah was Baal worship. I mean, that's demonstrably provable. That is factually what the evidence shows in pre-Islamic worship in Mecca, that they worshipped Hubal, the tribe of Muhammad. Hubal is Baal. They were part of Baal worship. So I publicly said that Allah is the manifestation of a demon. It is satanic. It is, and of course, the Bible clearly defines Islam as an antichrist spirit, because Islam denies the Father, denies the Son, denies Jesus has come in the flesh, denies the crucifixion, the resurrection. Islam is an antichrist spirit, and it is demonic to the core. Allah is not the God of the Bible.
Let's go to Samuel next. Hi, Samuel in Wisconsin. You're on the air.
A fine conversation today. Your guest, no one ever mentioned whatever happened to Salman Rushdie, the cartoonist that was put under a death threat for writing about a comic strip about Muhammad. Could you comment on that?
Okay, thank you.
Well, that was the point we were making earlier with slander, correct? So Salman Rushdie, when he wrote his book Satanic Verses, before he was talking about his other comments, the number one reason were not only is individual Muslims or groups, but nations like Iran put death threats on him. We call it a fatwa, a religious ruling saying if anybody kills him, that is permissible in Islam. It's because he wrote a book called Satanic Verses, where the early verse of the Quran talked about that Allah had 3 daughters, and then those verses were later changed. That's the point. Is if you slander Islam, if you say anything factually true, slander in Islam doesn't mean it's a lie. It means if Muslims are offended by what you're saying, then you can be killed. And that's the exact point. And that's what's facing America, folks, if we don't rise up now with courage and speak out against these things, because the time will come that you will be visited at your door by police protecting Muslims because you dared to criticize Islam on social media or on, some post or to your friends and family or as a pastor. If I teach on it, does that make me a criminal? That's what's coming to America.
Samuel, thanks for the call. We have Wade next in Lodi, Minnesota, and you're on the air, Wade.
Hello. Shahram, first of all, thank you for your obedience to Christ and serving him the way you do, to step out and to live in courage. It's an inspiration. Thank you for doing this. So my angle is, if Islam, is my understanding, is 80% political, and then the religious aspect that falls in the remainder of that, can't Islam be, or can't we go undermine it from that vantage point? We're United States is a constitutional republic, and anything counter other than that shouldn't be allowed or legal to be freely practiced in the public square. That's
great. Thank you, Wade.
Understanding of my question.
Great question, and Shahram will comment on that, because some governors are seeking, this action against CARE. We also have states that have taken up referendum questions about not allowing any international law to govern their state, including that of Sharia. So, isn't this diametrically opposed to our Constitution that Wade is talking about here?
Well, 100%. Two really important things that Wade brought up that were very, very, very good. One is that the majority of Islam or Islamic law, what is known as Sharia, is governmental and legal. That's been what Islam is hid behind, right? Islam is hid behind the fact that it's a religion, versus a very small percentage of all of Islamic teaching and all of Islamic law deals with, quote, religious practices. So, yes, number one, that should be the way we're fighting it, is that Islam is not a religion. Islam is a governmental, legal, political system, and therefore, because that system seeks to be above every other system of law, including our constitutional republic, it is an antithetical. It should be banned. It should not be allowed, because it is no different than if someone says, I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist, I want to overthrow the U.S. government. We would say, no, get out. You're not allowed here. That's antithetical. We should make the same distinction with Islam. They want to overthrow our laws. There is no coexisting. There is no assimilation with the ideology. It is not radicalism. And what I've proposed is label Islam as not just Sharia, label Islam in the terms of where our founders came out of. Our founders came out of monarchy, and they said there can be no theocratic rule in America. If we label Islam as a theocracy, then we can ban it, because theocratic rule is diametrically opposed to our constitutional republic, because we came out of a theocracy, the divine right of kings in England, and we understand that no theocracy can be governed by man. Only Christ will come in and usher a theocracy one day. So that's been my strategy now that I'm talking with legislators and activist groups, saying go after Islam as a theocratic rule. Because what they do is, Jim, they hide behind the term Sharia. They say, oh, Sharia is just religious. And that's what they hide behind that term if you try to ban Sharia. Ban theocracy. Islam is a theocracy, and I think we have a long-term strategy.
Wade, thanks for the call. Squeeze in Joshua in Kentucky. You're on the air.
Yeah, I believe like the Islam, Sharia law is going to bring in the martial New World Order law. Yeah. And people in America need to wake up of what time we in. Yeah. For real, because if you look at it, who's alive? God's alive, but Muhammad is dead. Yeah. That's why Islam don't understand that Muhammad is dead.
Joshua, thank you. We are out of time on the broadcast today. Shahram, a final 15-second thought from you.
Well, I appreciate what he said. Amen. Jesus Christ is alive. Muhammad is dead. Jesus Christ is the one true God. He is the Son of God. And again, folks, this is what they can call us whatever they want. They can say Islamophobia till they're blue in the face. Don't let it stop you. Be courageous. Stand up for God. Stand up for our constitutional republic.
TILministry.com is the website, TILministry.com. Shahram, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
And friends, thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.